Ma says it's time to hunker down for the trade war. In the last 24 hours, the scale of the fight has grown dramatically, with the U.S. and China hitting each other with new tariffs. The chairman of Alibaba warned his shareholders this war won't be over anytime soon.
It's going to last long. It's going to be mess. Maybe 20 years. Don't think it will stop in 20 months or 20 days. This thing will last long. If you want to have a short-term solution, there's no short-term solution.
Joining me now from Beijing, Robert Lawrence Kuhn is a longtime advisor to China's leaders and the author of How China's Leaders Think. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Your reaction to Jack Ma's prediction, and do you agree?
The public stance of China has to be strong. The legitimacy of the government and of the Communist Party is based on two primary factors. One is the economic development. China is celebrating this year 40 years of reform and opening up, really having created an economic miracle, an astonishing 50 times increase of per GDP per capita. So that has been terrific. The second area is national pride and national rejuvenation. And frankly, China, as almost every other country, if the two come in conflict, the latter has to prevail, especially in China with a history of 100 years of bullying, as they say, by foreign powers, mostly Western, and then, of course, Japan. This has caused a deep scar in the Chinese psyche. So you have all of these factors coming together. But I can tell you the public stance of the government, Jack Ma, we just heard, is very strong. And they have to be. If you look at what President Trump said, that is not a public posture for seeking solution, not just saying that 25% will in January will go up, but then threatening if you retaliate at all, we're going to levy tariffs on everything else. That's a very aggressive stance, and China really has no choice. But behind the scenes, I talk to economists, the leading economists, officials every day. Everybody wants a solution, and they want it a lot sooner than 20 years. But number one, they have to have a government in Washington or people they can talk to that they will have confidence that what they say will be implemented. And they want a solution, because many of the problems, if we look at the problems, many of them are consonant with what China needs itself. Opening up markets is one of them. Economists tell me all the time that China needs to open markets, to have more competitiveness within China. That's good for China, but they can't look like they're subservient or bowing to foreign pressures. I mean, we can go through each of the issues that are critical, and China has made progress in intellectual property. Is it perfect? Of course not. But they really need to do that. They will reduce the amount of forced technology transfer. What they will not do is change their industrial model, which is government support for future industries. So that's a sticking point. But I believe that they will open their markets further, and this is critical.
So how do you find compromise when, on the one hand, as you've described, you've got a country that wants to come across as a superpower equal to that of the United States, so any concessions would make them look weaker. On the other hand, there's not much love lost for China in the United States, as you know. Republicans and Democrats alike, some that may not even agree with most of President Trump's policies, can't go out necessarily and throw their arms around China and support China openly to the voters. So where do you come up with a middle ground to where both sides look like they're walking away with something?
Well, certainly that's the objective. You're absolutely right. There's no issue in American politics that all sides of the spectrum agree upon more than on China. In fact, on every other issue, one could say, from the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Democrats on the left, to Donald Trump, Republicans on the far right, however that spectrum is, they disagree on virtually everything we can say except China. So that's the reality we are dealing with. Nobody expects this to be resolved before the midterm elections, that's for sure. But if we look at the detail, if the people who really know what's going on look at the detail, we look at the real issues. We have the trade deficit, but most people in the United States recognize that's a simplistic number. It's a lot of things in there that are not accurate. parts of. If you look at the iPhone, China will get 6-10% of that. The rest are components that go into China. Services are $40 billion is not encountered that Chinese tourists and students pay in the U.S. So it's a very complicated number and benefits the U.S. because we have a lot of products that are at cheaper prices. But there are 5 real reasons that are problematic to the U.S. Closed markets, intellectual property protection, industrial espionage, which includes cyber theft, a forced technology transfer in JVs, and government support. Those are 5 real issues that the smart people in America are focusing on, and legitimately so. But these are, I believe, solvable because intellectual property, China is improving. Industrial espionage, they're reducing. And they have reduced. It needs to be more. Tech transfer, I think that will be eliminated. The 2 critical issues are government support of nascent industries in China and the opening of markets. I think ultimately those 2 can be traded, that the U.S. can recognize that China can do some of those things with certain restrictions and really open their markets more. I think that's the ultimate trade.
As you mentioned, it's a long-term process, not anything we're going to see resolved in the next few months or even years ahead, though many people would say it would be easier from the American perspective if the president wasn't approaching it as a go-it-alone type of relationship and getting out of TPP. But that's for another conversation. Robert, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And coming up, Elon Musk's moonshot mission gets its first passenger. The Japanese billionaire will make history in a SpaceX rocket. We want your opinions after this break. Just head to CNN.com/join.